Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another installment of the SciFest virtual webinar series. Now, if you've been with us since the beginning, then welcome back. But if this is your first time, then where have you been? We've been hosting a series of exciting webinars from viruses and vaccines to astronomy, NASA, the science of sound, commercial cannabis, and many more topics that will certainly make you raise your eyebrow a little bit. Since January, we've also been hosting a series for the little ones. They've been building volcanoes, extracting DNA, they solved a chocolate case using fingerprints to find the guilty culprit, and even grew their own crystals. And this happened all in the comfort of their own home. So if you're feeling some FOMO, then don't stress. Just head on to the SciFest YouTube channel to see everything we've done, or go on to scifest.org.za to register for our up-and-coming events. Now, if you've ever had the opportunity to attend SciFest here in Makanda, then you'd know that SciFest is not just another science festival. There are a variety of activities available to people of all ages, and although we are now virtual, that component certainly hasn't changed. And on that note, in the month of February, we'll be hosting a series of webinars focused on Indigenous knowledge systems. In other words, we are looking at where and how amasiko and science meet. And when you really think about it, you wouldn't usually say the arts and storytelling and the sciences could come together. But what a better way to convey the science of everything around us than through storytelling? Because since humans could, they have been able to explain life's mysteries through stories using language. Even back home, when we'd all gather around as cousins and hear Ukoko say, "Kwasuka suyela," and it would always want to go Tosi. We knew that we were about to learn another lesson about life. And these tales, although they are fictional, they really carried wisdom. So why not use storytelling as a means to educate? So today we are joined by the legendary, well-respected and truly world-renowned performer, writer, and arts practitioner amongst her many titles, Dr. Gcina Mhlophe, who will be taking us through African wisdom and education. If you are inspired or if you have any questions, then please feel free to drop them off in the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. But for now, please help me give a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Gcina Mhlophe. Dr. Gcina?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, you keep disappearing.
You can hear you loud and clear, Doctor.
Yes.
Welcome to the SciFest.
Yay, I'm so happy to be with you again. It's a lovely opportunity to be able to share stories with you. You know, when we were talking about what we've learned from our ancestors and where we are coming from, and even at a very young age, to hear our parents saying when I was a little girl, or grandmother or grandfather saying when I was, what? You mean you were boys and girls? It's hard. But indeed, over generations, that's how the knowledge was passed on. One of the stories that I've really loved and I'd like to share today is a story that comes from West Africa. It's a story about a man called Kasanko. And Kasanko was a man who worked with metal, with iron, and he was an ironsmith every single day, whether it was hot, whether it was cold or windy, he didn't mind. He sat there by his fireplace and he made all kinds of tools, and he made hoes, he made spears, and he made the king's ring that he wore on his head. It was like a crown that he made with such precision, so beautiful. Everything Kasanko did, he made sure that it had that touch of excellence. He was never happy until he gave everything of himself. And sometimes his son would come back from herding the cattle and watch the father at work. And he would think the dedication, the way he focuses only on his work when he's out there. And his wife very often sat and said, you know, I'm falling in love just by looking at that face doing something that gives him such joy. The neighbors and other people came from far and wide. They sat with Kasanko And they brought him the news from over that side and that village over there. And everywhere they brought him the news. He didn't need a radio or any type of news channel. He had all of these people who sat with him and they brought him news. In those days, when people sat like that and did nothing, somebody could be irritated. But Kasanko didn't mind them sitting there, watching, learning from him, he hoped. And the king was not the most popular person in those days. And the king always often asked somebody to come to him, and he would give you a task that he was almost sure you couldn't perform. And when you didn't perform, you'd be severely punished. And sometimes people lost their lives. Kasanko was having a particularly good day one afternoon. The jokes were even funnier than before. Everybody was laughing and celebrating life. And they had a beautiful lunch. When the man from the king's place was sent, the messenger, he came and said, Kasanko, the king wants to see you. And so Kasanko thought, I have to go, but he was nervous because the king never wanted to see you just to see you. He was going to ask for something. And Kasanko's wife became even more nervous. Kasanko changed. He walked over to the king's place. When he got to the king's kraal, there were people waiting for him at the gate and he was sent in. As soon as he walked in, the king welcomed, oh, daughter, my daughter, come in, come in. And he walked in and the king said, please sit down. Kasanko said, oh, I'd rather stand. He was too nervous to sit down. The king said, I don't know why you are so nervous. Relax. And he hit him hard on his back. And he said, listen, I want you to do something special for me. And I know nobody else can do it. It's only you who can perform this task. Kasanko said, please, my king, tell me what it is. And the king told him, I want you to make me a man, a big, strong man, a living, walking, talking person. Excuse me, I didn't hear very well. A big man, you want a big statue? Yes, you can make a big man. He must be strong. He must look as strong as you are, Kasanko, but I want him to be a living, walking, talking man. Kasanko said, my king, I can make you a statue. I can make him as good looking as you wish, but a living, walking, talking person, I don't know, can perform that. The king said, ha, ha, ha. You know you are excellent, Kasanko. There's nothing you can't do. And he pushed him out of the door. And he told him, listen, don't worry, I'll bring the metal to your house. And Kasanko walked back. His feet were heavy, like there was iron on his feet. And he got back to his home. Whew. His wife said, what did the king want? Kasanko said, you don't want to know. He sat by himself and thought and thought. His son said, Baba, what does the king want? He said, you don't want to know. But they desperately wanted to know. And eventually he told them. Kasanko's wife started crying. That night they hardly slept, trying to think what to do. The messengers and the people from the king's kraal had brought lots of metal, some of it scrap metal, and they put it inside the gate and they left it there. And Kasanko was supposed to melt all of that to make a big, tall, strong, walking, talking man. How was he going to do that? For days, Kasanko hardly touched his food. For days, he hardly spoke to anybody. And when visitors came and they heard what the king wanted, ooh, this is bad. They knew this was not going to end well. Well, you know what? Kasanko decided, I have to accept. Maybe this man will punish me. Maybe he wants to kill me. I don't know what he wants to do. He went down to the river. He had a good wash. And then he went across, sat up on a hill and thought and thought. And then a man who was called the village fool, he walked up towards the Kasanko. He said, what is it? You look like you've seen death. And Kasanko said, maybe I'm staring death in the face. And what happened? What happened, says the village fool, laughing again. Kasanko says, well, I might as well tell you. The king has asked me to make a living, walking, talking person out of scrap metal. I can't do that. You know I can't do that. And if I don't do it, I'll be punished or I will be killed. You know our king. The village fool laughed and laughed until he cried. Oh my, we call him king. You know, if I were you, I'd ask him to give me bags and bags and bags full of human hair. And then that would not be all. I'd tell him to give me big potfuls of human tears. And I tell him, those are the ingredients I would use to make a living, walking, talking person. Ah! Kasanko jumped up and he said, you are my best friend. You know that? He grabbed the village fool, and he hugged him and jumped around with him. You are the best. You're the wisest man I've ever met. And Kasanko ran back home and he put on nice clothes, his very best. And he said, I'll be back. He kissed his wife and he walked light-footed to the king. The king saw the way he walked, that he was bringing some good news. He walked in and the king didn't have to say, sit down. Kasanko sat down, given something to drink. He drank all of it. And the king said, talk to me. What's going on? Have you finished my assignment? Kasanko said, my king, I'm almost done. He is there. He's strong like you asked. But I need a few ingredients so I could make him to be able to live, to breathe, to speak. In fact, he will walk over here and tell you who he is. The king said, what ingredients? Tell me. That's nothing. I'll give you anything you want. Kasanko said, my king, I need bags. And maybe let's call it 50 bags of human hair. The king said, that's nothing. He got his soldiers and his servants. He told them, go out, shave everybody, bring that human hair to me. And they went, they were puzzled. They didn't know what the king wanted to shave everybody for. Even old people, they had to take off their scarves, their hats and what? They had to take off everything. And they were shaved, and bags full of human hair were brought to the king's place. And Kasanko said, I also want something else, my king, to finish everything. That's going to oil the joints and help him to speak, loosen his tongue. His eyes are going to open and look at you. What is it? The king asked. I need human tears. I need 20 pots full of human tears. The king was puzzled, but he sent his soldiers and his servants out. And they took pot upon pot, and they went beating up people, forcing them to cry. But now, when you are so upset, they've shaved so many people, and now they want them to cry. You don't sit there and wait for somebody to take your tears and put them in a pot. They wipe their own tears. And people tried. In fact, the soldiers and the servants were tired of this nonsense themselves. They just went back to their homes. They didn't go back to the king's place. They thought whatever he wants to do to us, he'll have to do it to all of us. The king waited and waited. Kasanko had walked back to his home, waiting for the human tears and the human hair. And then the king sitting there by himself, his wife, the queen, and his children didn't want anything to do with him. They locked themselves away and they left him alone. They hated the idea of the possibility of Kasanko being killed for no reason at all. Well, the king sat and thought, human hair, human tears can actually make a statue to walk, to think, to talk, to see me. You know what? I think Kasanko is dealing me the same cards I dealt him. And the king, he didn't send a messenger. He walked on his own 2 feet. People were looking at him walking straight to Kasanko's house. When he got to the gate, he saw all the scrap metal that had been sent had not been touched. It was still inside the gate, it was lying there. And he went inside the house. The king was asked to sit down and he said, I'd rather stand. He was given something to drink. He said, I'm all right. I don't need anything to drink. Kasanko said, what's wrong, my king? What is wrong? Please talk to me. I don't know you like this. Kasanko was smiling from ear to ear. The king said, I understand, Kasanko. I understand. I asked you something impossible. Do tell me, what can I do to apologize, not only to you, but to all the people that I have hurt in this country? What can I do? Kasanko says, my king, in fact, I've had a dream for a long time. I'd like many, many people who always come here to look at my work, to admire me, and look at the touch of excellence I put into everything that I do. And I'd like every one of them to come back, to share the skills they have. This to be our central fireplace. Everybody to teach the other one, young and old, for the children to learn from us, not just to watch us, not just to admire us. And for the older people who feel like there are new skills they need, they can come here to my house, to Kasanko's central fireplace. The king went out. He did not send any messenger. He shouted out loud, everybody's called to Kasanko's house, until his voice was hoarse. More people spread the word. The following day and the next, people were gathering and gathering at Kasanko's home, and they were told, this is the central fireplace where everybody had to bring their skills. Everybody had to share what they knew with one another, where our children had to watch and learn, not only by seeing, but by touching and learning and experimenting and making mistakes and trying again, and singing old songs and sharing old poems and doing all the things that our people do when they do fantastic crafts and work and building and shaping. And they learned so many things. And for days and weeks and months and years, Kasanko's central fireplace was the place to be. And for many, many years, people tell the story that I just told you. And I think for as long as there have been people on earth, there have been stories. And people have tried to make sense of the mysteries around them by telling stories, by coming up with idioms and sayings and proverbs. And often they talk about experiences and the way they see life. You know, when you look, for instance, at a person who always likes to send someone else to do things for them, they say, yes, the rock rabbit doesn't have a tail today because it asked others to go and find a tail when tails were handed out by the king. Other people will tell you, my father always repeated when I was young, ayikho inkomo yobuthongo, you'll never earn a cow through sleeping. And many people always say that when you are in a big hurry to succeed, to do everything fast, 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 you think you're going to make a lot of money, you think you're going to achieve this, you achieve that, they say, lalela, ubude abupangwa. You cannot eat and gulp and gulp and gulp success. You take one step at a time, one step at a time. All of those things always said, no matter how much of the revolutions and industrial this and all the growth and the important developments throughout the world have come and gone and new ones were born. The human beings have got to be born. They've got to learn to crawl. They've got to learn to stand, and they stand up to walk and run and do many things, and they learn so much, even with language. Our languages are beautiful. I remember trying to say some of the words or the sounds. When you hear somebody making that sound as a child, somebody made another sound. You imitated, you repeated and repeated. And finally, by the time you could speak, you slotted all those sounds into the words that you were speaking. Nowadays, we are trying so hard to find wisdoms from other cultures, from other countries in different parts of the world. We put away what is ours. Our wisdoms are here and they have always been. I look at our languages and I say storytellers are language lovers. I look at our wisdoms and I say there are still wisdoms today like there always have been. The way we have understood the very depths of the ocean, the very wisdoms that are carried in the stars and the sun and the moon, the wisdoms that are ancient trees, the baobab, the yellow wood, umsimbiti, umkhanyakude, all of these trees, they speak to us. I look at the wisdoms honoring different animals, ondlovu, boyabenyati. I look at the wisdoms and the soul behind everybody's name. Ongwenya, Omtimkulu. I look at all of these names. We've got the major wisdoms embedded in every one of us. We should never give up on the wisdoms that our people have passed on to us generation after generation. Think of schools or even colleges and universities, ngesiXhosa bathi liziko lemfundo, the central fireplace and knowledge. And also, when you run out of your own fire, you take a stick, and go and reignite your light at a central fireplace. And so we need to always reignite our fire through our own ancient wisdoms. The elders, it's only up to us to ask for those wisdoms. Let's read them out loud and share with one another. And the experiences that we've had, let's compare them with those of say to us, mine is inferior and yours is better. People like so much to copy, to imitate, to cherish people's cultures and wisdoms. There is no need for that. We who've been blessed to travel in different parts of the world, everywhere we go, cultural ambassadors, we are very clear that our heritage is everything. Is this beautiful, beautiful blanket we should wear with pride. And that heritage is going to see us through even in these difficult times. We're living through very, very difficult times of uncertainty. We can use everything that we have learned over the years, but let's go back to our ancient ways. And that education, some of it might not be written down yet, but it's up to us to write them down for future generations. It's up to us to record them, to have them on the internet, to have them accessible, because we are not going to be here forever. And other people think that every day is just an ordinary day. Every day is different. Every day is unique. It is a gift. Let's use this gift that is a day in your life. That day that you have, share what you have. Share your experiences. The operative word is sharing. Because when you have a light, you don't take that light and put it away. When you've got something that is a gift and you keep hiding it and hiding it, it ends up diminishing and diminishing until it disappears. Like a story. A story repeated is a story remembered. So our wisdoms, let's repeat them and share them in our languages as well. Yabo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gcina.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. That was really, really, really something. And it actually, it occurred to me the other day, I was thinking about something similar in that I can imagine how hard it has been, especially during this pandemic, a pandemic that is forcing us to stay apart. If we're going to be well, we have to stay apart and we have to stay in our own corners. And I was thinking of how this pandemic is affecting us, because now we are not able to be a community, because the one thing that is really important, just as humans and in our human nature, is to be a community, to share.
Be together, we gravitate towards one another.
Exactly, and to share. And the other sad thing about this pandemic is that is actually the people that are dying as abantu abadala, and you know, elders have so much to share, you know, and I don't think that us as the younger generation that is more affluent with technology and things like that, that we are doing enough to collect their stories and their experiences and their memories. What do you think we can do more of, Tina, to make sure that when an elder dies, any elder of the community, that knowledge does not die with them?
Thank you so much. One of the things that I'm seeing at the moment, even during 2020 last year, when we were looking at how can we reach one another, we resorted to these platforms, and these Zoom connections are new. And if we didn't have these platforms, we would not be talking to one another. We wouldn't even sometimes we don't even know each other's phone numbers. And people tune in on Facebook and they find platforms there, the streaming of events on Facebook and different places on Instagram. These platforms, we must not look at them as just a passing phase. They must be here to stay, and we add more to them. They are the different fireplaces that we can talk about. And we say, let's put as much information online as well, on YouTube as well. And very often, you know, there is an amazing lady that I love. I'm going to mention her name. Maybe you've never heard of her. Her name is Cynthia Shange, one of the first ever film stars in our country, and a beauty to be reckoned with. When you go on YouTube, when you go on Google, you hardly find anything about her. A stunning human being like that. I think a documentary or something has got to be done about this Cynthia Shange, because she's so humble and she doesn't talk too loud. She doesn't praise herself. Doesn't mean she doesn't have a vault of knowledge. She is amazing. And there are many of those who are still alive that are here with us. And so we need to use these opportunities that we have, as well as the little gadgets we have, the cell phones. Sometimes we wait for a camera and a sound crew and lights and and then you've got this big budget to go and do a documentary film and we're doing a movie. Sometimes you don't need to do that. You know, one of the things that made the Nigerian film industry to thrive was through cell phones. And they were not even as sophisticated as cell phones are today. Today, cell phones are something else. You know, so we better use the gadgets that we have, but also, not only that, sit down and spend time with older people. I'm seeing people just neglecting their grandmothers and grandfathers, neglecting their parents, just pretending as if they don't exist, and then developing their thumb muscles and just looking at these cell phones and then swiping and then and laughing by themselves with people you don't know, people you've never met, people who don't particularly care about you. And so we need to look at these wisdoms that exist and live inside our homes. And those wisdoms are something else, and they should be cherished. One of them, the people, another person that is still alive again, amazing orator, storyteller, poet, fabulous elder, is Ubabu Don Matera. And Ubabu Don, I just think, even just to have a big photograph of him at a library, let young people ask questions. Who is that elder over there? You know, when I travel in other countries, I go to Argentina, I go to Brazil, I go to Germany, I go to Italy. In many countries, in the libraries, there are photographs of authors on the walls. Photographs of authors. I don't know if you've ever seen that in my country. There are no photographs of authors on the walls in libraries. Now, these are places that are places of knowledge, but they can't put just faces of authors. How much more then with our village elders, the mothers, the aunts, the uncles, the grandmothers, grandfathers, all of those people who are there. You know, when we talk about the mining industry, imagine if you just had a festival of people sharing stories. Just give them 15 minutes. They will give you 150 minutes if you let them, but just give them 15 minutes to talk about just some of their experiences working in the mines. Do you know how many 15 minutes we could have? People who give everything of themselves, digging the gold that's going to go to foreign countries, risking their lives every single day, being buried alive under the ground. And when they come out, they don't earn enough to even buy a wedding ring for their wives. And so all of those stories need to be told. And then there are people in the heritage space. I don't know if you've noticed, many people see storytelling as at the very, very bottom of all the other creative arts. When you think of creative arts, let's start with music. Let's start with dance. Let's start. We mentioned all kinds of things and maybe sculptures. And maybe let's talk about people who do fashion design. Now that's happening. That's happening. Fashion. You count anything you want under the creative arts. And then at the very, very end, at the bottom, below your feet, you put storytelling there. The weird thing is that story is the mother of all art forms. All the songs that are classics that you will always remember, they've got a story to tell. I promise you, doesn't matter what song you know, from which culture, from which country, in which language, the words, they stay with you. You see, they stay with you. I've never met Victor Ndlazulwana. I've never met him. But my goodness, when I listen to his music, I think, I should have met this man. What's the story with this dude? You know, it's the lyrics. You met Omake Davashe, you know, the composers. You see, those names, those are great names. The composers, the George Pemba, Gerard Sikoto, without the storytelling being recognizable in their art, we wouldn't remember their artwork. Wouldn't remember their artwork, wouldn't remember any, even the kind of attire we wear when we say this is our traditional attire. Why do a certain nationality choose to dress like this? There's a story behind it. Why do they like to eat this type of food? Why do they build their hearts to be round? What's the story behind it? You can look at architecture, you can look at anything at all. The way people have traveled and ended up in a particular place in times of migration. What took them there? There's a story behind it. Now talk about our names. Our names are something else. Unomgobo, Unoloyiso. Well, you know those names. These are beautiful, beautiful names. So Nwabile. All of those names. There's a friend of ours, his name was Umpiga Ipeli. There's a story behind that name, Big Umpiga Ipeli. And he was the most humble, most soft-spoken, most gentle, good-looking gentleman you ever met. And he was called Umpiga Ipeli. And there are many names that are like this. My name, Nokugcina. There's a soul behind the name. And so let's look at story as the mother of all art forms, and history then, history telling, that is about the mother, that is story.
Wow, that is so true. Everything that ends up being a creative output, no matter what that output, whether it's music, whether it's a play, a poem, or a sculpture, it's behind a story. It's an artist's interpretation of a story. And another thing I think is that it's important, this indigenous knowledge systems and our stories as Africans, when it comes to the conversation around decolonization, it's this of very important aspect there, because you keep mentioning, but I like how you are incorporating ukuthi okudala, the old must merge together with the new. So it's not to say that because you're a storyteller and we consider your art ancient that we must now disregard you. No.
Rewind and go back in time. We always say we like to touch the past with our memories, feel the future flying on the wings of imagination. Come on and touch the past with our memories, feel the future flying on the wings of imagination. We can feel the past, feel the future. It's there with us, and the present makes us go. It's niggas a lot of goes, you know, that drive to make something of ourselves.
Wow, I have a question for you here from one of our attendees. It says, do you believe online storytelling has the same effect as it was done in the olden days?
Online storytelling will never be the same as having a live audience. The advantage I've had over the years is being able to tell stories on radio for years. And you would look at the sound men in studio, laughing their heads off watching me. Because once I get started and I see my audience in front of me, the audience is there. They want the story more than anything in the world. And I'm telling them the story, and they are my best audience ever. And it's on radio. It's not on television. There's not even a camera in front of me. And so many people always say to me, I believed that you were telling me the story. And I'm so glad, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to tell you the story. And then I did stories on television as well. It is wonderful to tell the stories on these platforms, but when you have a privilege of having a live audience, you know, one of the things I did when I went from full-time theater to full-time storytelling, I gave myself the democratic right to ask in any theater, whether I'm in Europe or in America or in South Africa, it doesn't matter where I am. I said, I want the lights to be just lifted up a little bit so I can see the audience, because I want the circle to be completed. I want what I'm saying, what I'm feeling, what I'm sharing to reach my audience and bounce right back at me. So when I complete that circle, there's no stopping me. And I know that when I give them that story with that much love, that enthusiasm, that joy, it's going to be infectious. When they leave that venue, they're going to say, I heard a story. And let me tell you the story. And that's what stories are for. They're for sharing. Yeah, you've muted there.
I'm having a hard time finding my mute button. um, Thank you very much for that. I think it's been very prevalent, especially in this pandemic, that it's not the same. Having an audience there is just not the same as not having them there and watching them through a
That's
screen.
right.
I mean, I was even thinking to myself while I was doing the intro, it didn't feel like I was talking to anyone, because you're just looking at yourself and you know the script that is in front of you. So yeah, it's definitely not the same. But I think that it is like, as you said, it's something that still has to be done, because I think that from now onwards, nothing is ever going to be the same, and we have to create a new normal. But we cannot be excluding our wisdoms. We cannot be excluding our people from this new normal, as has been done in the past. We cannot repeat that mistake.
Absolutely.
I have another question for you. I have another question for you from Gcina. Uti, I presume Indigenous knowledge has had a huge impact on you, especially because you have traveled. Do you believe that it is still alive and people are preserving it and using it effectively nowadays?
I'm going to answer the last part. We are not preserving it effectively. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to do more in preserving our knowledge. The blessing of having traveled the world. You know, my grandmother who brought me up, she used to say to me, there's a bigger world out there. There's a bigger world out there. And I thought she meant the province of KwaZulu-Natal, you know, because the two of us used to travel, and we were globetrotters, you know. We'd leave Hammersdale to Durban and go to Port Shepstone, just an hour south, and then go 2 hours north, and just a little bit, you know, sightseeing, visiting relatives. I thought I was such a globetrotter. And my gogo sat me down one day and said, no, listen, there is a bigger world out there. I said, yes, gogo, I know. She said, you don't know. And she kept repeating that there's a bigger world, and that KwaZulu-Natal is a small place in South Africa, and that South Africa was a small place in the Izwekazi Africa. She called the continent Izwekazi. I thought, what is Izwekazi? Doesn't matter, gogo knows things. And then she said, Izwekazi Africa is a small place in a bigger world out there. Oh, she lost me. It's okay, she knows things, my gogo. But after some time, I was curious about that Izwekazi Africa. I traveled to the Eastern Cape. I traveled to Johannesburg. I traveled to Cape Town. I got to see my country. I go to different places. And then it was Botswana and Lesotho, Swaziland. And the next thing, I was up in the sky to England. And for the first time, this place called overseas, most overseas. And everywhere I've seen the world. I've traveled to the different continents. Everywhere I go, I have been able to share the stories, the songs, the poems of my people, the theater, all of that. I have been able to be in a movie and see the premiere in another country, people so excited. So our wisdoms, yes, we've shared with other countries. While we are there, we learn their wisdoms as well. One of the times I was invited to Idea 95 in Australia. I was exhausted because I was traveling too much. And I thought maybe I should be skimming here. If I don't want to go, I can always say to these people, listen, if you do this for me, I will come. If you can't, then I'm not coming. And I said to Peter, who was my person who invited me, I said to him, unless you introduce me to Aboriginal storytellers, I'm not coming. He said, okay, I'll come back to you. And then I waited for almost a week and I was sharp. I don't have to fly to Australia. He can't find an Aboriginal storyteller. Well, before the end of the week, the phone rang and this guy said, I've got them for you. What? Now I've got to think about going to Australia. And I flew to Australia and I arrived there and I met beautiful people and I met Aboriginal storytellers, I met dancers, I met people from Chabukai dance team. I met all kinds of people in Australia. And in fact, I invited one of the Aboriginal storytellers, Maureen Watson, to come back to South Africa to share their own wisdoms with our audiences. I was still director of Zanendaba Storytellers at the time. You know, everywhere I go, when you share what you've got, people are inspired to share right back. So yes, we have shared our wisdoms in different, but we don't do enough. As I'm saying, there are so many people who prefer that when I go to France, I want to be Frencherized. And if you want to go to Switzerland, you want to be Switzerized, Norway, and I don't know where else people want to go and be the fake of that country. I don't want to be a fake of anything. Shall be Gcina Mhlophe for life.
Wow. Thank you for that. Just as a follow-up to that question, what is it, especially as Tina, as young people, you had already mentioned some as it like we must actually talk to our elders instead of just sitting on our phones and scrolling through Facebook. But what is it that we can do more to attain this knowledge and to retain it and to pass it out? And to make sure ukuthi amasiko and these wisdoms are siyawagcina.
There's something about research that we don't do enough of as African people. Sometimes the need is there. Some people have done some research before us. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe it needs a bit more, but they've done the groundwork. Let's add what we've got. We've got more facilities to research and dig up the knowledge and add to what we can share and learn, and what we can learn from the things. Go and ask so and so. Some elders or older people, they just say, leave me alone. I don't have time for that. And children get discouraged. But try not to be discouraged. Try find somebody who might know, especially if it's a subject that you care about. And if it's a subject that you care about, go digging and digging and digging. You know, one of them.
Oh, we seem to have lost the doctor there, but her connection should reconnect in a minute now, hopefully. While we are still trying to get the doctor back, if you have any more questions regarding Indigenous knowledge, African wisdoms, please drop them off in the Q&A. Yes,
we're playing hide and seek today, yeah?
Hey. This network doesn't want this conversation to happen. Hey, hayi qala kwaba u-Eskom manje yile.
It's right. That's right. So we definitely need to do our research. We need to look at the knowledge that we acquire and spread the word. When you learn something, you must not think it's enough. When you learn something, go and find more and more. And if it's in your area of specialization, you want to learn something about a particular part of our culture. I don't know if you've seen the lack of African touch in architecture.
Yes.
I don't know if there's a shortage of Black people who are in architecture. There's hardly anything that says an African person had a hand in that building over there. There's hardly anything that has got an African touch in architecture. And also, when you look at the way we decide this is our traditional food, during the World Cup in 2010, for instance, people went around saying our traditional food is bani chow. Bani what? That's not my food. That's not my traditional food. And it went around being spread throughout, and that's a great pity. And somebody came up with a big lie that our culture, we had a vuvuzela. I don't know whose culture it is, but it's not my culture. And that robbed us of our voices. We South Africans sing. We sing as South Africans. We are known all over the world. And so all of those melodies, the stadiums should have been ringing with our voices. So we shouldn't allow ever for another world event to take place in South Africa and we allow our voices to be muted, for our food not to be tasted and celebrated.
You actually are reminding me recently when our rugby team did us proud and they won our World Cup. The one thing that was really surprising, but in a good way for me to see, were people singing Amagwijo at a stadium.
Yes. We would be absolutely that people still remember.
Yes, we'd be at a pub, even sometimes a predominantly white pub, but everyone there is just so happy and everyone is joining in the singing. And I'm like, this is really such a good representation of here is the sport that was not born here, that is not of here, but that we are dominating. But at the same time, we are not forgetting who we are. We are still acknowledging our beings through Amagwijo, by supporting our team through singing Amagwijo. So, but I think there is a very sort of blurred line when it comes to definitions and language. So here's a question from Gcina Mhlophe. It says, how would Dr. Mhlophe differentiate between indigenous knowledge and heritage knowledge? And I also want to add to that, Uguti, where does the word kengoku amasiko come in that space?
I think you're talking about issues of the same family. All of it belong to the same family. And when you think about indigenous knowledges are knowledges that are the wisdoms of our own people that have carried over generations. And that is very, very important for us to try and capture when we've lost them, recapture. And then you talk about, what is the other one? The indigenous knowledge systems.
Indigenous knowledge and heritage knowledge.
And then heritage. Yes. Sometimes heritage is something that is similar to indigenous knowledge, but it's something that we have inherited, and some of it is intangible. And that intangible heritage, like amahubo, like when you talk about ways of praying, our spirituality. When you talk about our connection with our ancestors, and also being connected to certain when people say bungane, and you look at the crab being the different animals that we are related to. Sometimes when we arrive at a certain space where people keep repeating that African people know nothing about the environment, you mention that, we used to live with the environment. We never went and just removed the trees willy-nilly. We knew which tree to get a certain type of medicine from. And we did not destroy the roots, we did not destroy the bark and the what. And you knew what times for hunting. We didn't go just shooting and killing animals at random and you're not gonna eat them. And all of it was done with understanding. That is our heritage. And when I walk into spaces like that, when the people keep repeating that we know nothing about the environment, about healing one another, we're not scientists in this manner. I walk in and say, singam Africa. Siyasi, thanda isizwe sethu uyaya singam Africa. Simunye nendalo, simunye nendalo. We are one with nature. And we need to remember that. And we are not black, we are brown. We are all shades of the earth. When you look at different types of clay, we are light, we are dark brown and light brown and everything in between. We are the people of the earth. And the way even the way we dance, we hit the ground hard because we want to remember this Mother Earth that we honor so much. As young people, we're always told, walk with a sense of dignity on the land of our ancestors. That is our heritage. And we must preserve that mutual and self-respect. And then you come to amasiko. Amasiko are traditions that we do at certain times, like the coming of age ceremony, or starting at the beginning with imbeleko, and the giving of a name of a child. And when a child is at a certain age, certain things happen. Amasiko esiwenzayo lawo, and why do we have to have umboti? Why should we cook certain types of food? Why do we look at a goat as this animal that connects us so much with the ancestors when we perform certain ceremonies? And we do those ceremonies. They're extremely important. And sometimes you leave them, you don't perform them because we're super educated, because we're just happening, it's just not hip, you know. It's just not it's not cool according to the place where we live now, and everybody has got a degree and then and I don't know what else, and been studied overseas, and we came back and we're driving these cars, all of these fancy things, and we wearing Amaguchis and the other thing, you know what I call it, umlilo votayo, Louis Bloody Vuitton, and so. Anyway, you look at all of those things. it is up to us to repeat and explain why. If you had a daughter like me, you would have to deal with that question, why? My mother, ooh, she didn't know what to do with me. When you say I must do something, I want to know why. Once we explain to children again and again why we are performing certain ceremonies, they will understand. Even if at a certain time they've been with people of other cultures and they want to be Indian this week and they want to be Greek this week, I don't know what they want to be, at some point they're going to be sitting alone and watching somebody cherishing, celebrating a ceremony that's performed for them, and they're going to think, I want some of that. In fact, it's in my culture. And so I want it now, because why? That you gave them an answer to that question called why. And that's important. Let's not be tired when children ask why.
Hey, Ma'am Gcina, that's a very tough ask, because whys can become very tiring.
Why?
But thank you so much.
You can pass the why. Learn from politicians. Learn the politicians. You know, when you ask politicians why this and this happened, no, it's not my department. Ask the transport department, and then the transport department says, no. Ask, you know, if you don't know the why, maybe you're a young mother, you're a young father. Pass it. Ask someone who's older than you. That someone who's older than you is going to ask another one. And finally, the top department will bring it back to you, and you'll sit down with your child and say, I've got an answer to the why.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ma'am Gcina. This was very, very informative. And I think a very, very important conversation to have, especially now that things are just not going to be the same. And we don't want to be repeating the same mistakes that we did back way when the world started changing. So at least this time when the world is changing, let it change with us. Let us incorporate ourselves in this changing world by not leaving behind our knowledge. Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Gcina. This is a
thank
very
you.
important conversation.
Let's try and be a better version of ourselves.
Yes.
And when we try to be better and stronger and bringing back what has been hiding, you know, certain animals hibernate in winter. So whatever has been hibernating, let's wake up to a new day and say we're going to be stronger with electronic this, internet that, and also when we meet face to face, we should be stronger and have more compassion and mutual respect than ever before.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to our attendees for today. Thank you for joining us. We know we had a bit of a glitch with the postponement, and then so things haven't been going as planned. But thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. Exactly. Thank you for joining us today.
Patience. It's Tomisa and Ryan.
Yes.
Thanks for this privilege. And Ngobile, what a beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you. Please head on to our SciFest YouTube page to catch a recording of this webinar, and also to our SciFest website just to see our up and coming events. Again, if you have a little one, every Friday at 4 o'clock, there'll always be something to do for them. Just a little bit of some kitchen ingredients put together, and they are building volcanoes and doing all sorts of stuff. So please head on over there and check that out. Otherwise, from me and my colleagues tonight and my beautiful guest, it's been lovely. I hope to see you again very soon.